He was player of the game today. He came in, big situation. He stepped up, but that's him, though.
He's tough because he has as good a slider as you'll see coming out of a bullpen on the right side. But there's still a lot of fastball, 93, 94.
Oh, Adam Ottavino. Has he manned up here this afternoon?
There we go here in the bullpen now with Adam Ottavino of the Rockies. He's in the Rockies bullpen, and here we have a modern pitcher using the modern tools. I even saw your high strike there that we were talking about before. Let's start with your process then. You changed your pitching repertoire, your attack, right? Tell us about that.
Yeah, you know, I think that in the past it's always been preached to me to pitch down, 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 and I still believe in that. However, you know, I made some adjustments throughout the season last year, which I think is necessary every year to kind of look at the reality of the league and adjust accordingly. And for me, I started pitching a little up more in the second half, especially above the zone with 2 strikes, and I felt like it, you know, paid off well for me.
And most of it seems like the strike zone is giving a little more to the low pitch. Obviously, ground ball emphasis is a big thing. You were in the Cardinals organization. You were drafted by the Cardinals. Was that part of it? That's part of their philosophy, the ground ball pitching?
Yeah, definitely. You know, the thinking being, you know, you get more double plays that way. You let your defense work for you, stay involved in the game. Also, it's kind of hard to beat you. 3 singles it requires to get a run rather than extra base hits. More extra base hits occur, you know, in the air. So, you know, the more ground balls you can get, the more you can limit your damage.
Do they actually have the Rockies had a string? You're saying? Do they have a string going across? Need to pitch below that string just to emphasize that. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it's common with a lot of teams, but what happens is, especially early in spring training, they'll put a little string at the bottom of the strike zone. Kind of gives you a visual of where to shoot for, shooting down in the zone, creating that angle that you want.
But now you found a different area to attack, right? How did you find it? What did you find?
Well, I just noticed over the last few years that lefties especially, but most hitters in the league have become very good at hitting the low pitch because of the fact that so many pitchers are throwing it. And my fastball is just getting hit too much, and I felt like I've always been a pitcher that succeeds actually with my fastball up in the zone. So first I researched online. I think I read an article on Fangraphs about Sean Doolittle utilizing the high fastball. Saw some quotes from some hitters saying that they just couldn't get on top of it. So I try to implement that into my game. I also pay attention to guys like Lance Lynn or Jordan Zimmerman. They're doing similar things. And that area, that's like a strike, but just a little bit too high, it yields a lot of weak pop-ups and swings and misses.
Well, and plus, guys get a good look. They think they're getting a good look at it. It looks fat coming in, but it's a little too high to handle.
Yeah, it looks meaty. You know, it's hard to lay off of it, especially for a guy like me who throws a lot of breaking pitches. It comes out of that same kind of slot, as we would say. So it can be a little tricky, I think.
So you're reading things on Fangraphs, right? So and then you're starting to go to work in your own head on it. What tools do you use? What information do you use?
Well, in terms of like overall how I assess my season, I look at things like strikeout percentage, walk percentage, line drive percentage, things like that, because those to me really dictate how you're pitching and how the league is responding to your pitches. But like individually, I look at scouting reports. I try to see which guys are first pitch swingers. I always want to know who's super aggressive so I don't give them something that they want. Right. And then on top of that, I look at chase areas. So once I do get ahead in the count, where they're likely to swing at a bad pitch.
What's chase areas? So that's in your scouting report, that your team analytics and your scouting and your pitching staff, right?
Yeah.
Tell us about what type of report do you get? What do you mean chase zones?
Well, basically, you'll get a little a box where it'll show the strike zone, and there'll be percentages of what guys are hitting inside the zone, but also the percentages at which they swing at pitches outside of the zone. And anytime you see a guy that's chasing more than 40% in a certain area, then you know he's very likely to swing at a bad pitch in that area. So if I get ahead 0-2, 1-2, I try to exploit that fact. You know, as a rule of thumb, hitters don't like to hit balls. They're not as good at hitting them as strikes. So when you get ahead, you give them a chance to swing at something that you want, and that's where that comes into play.
Are you looking at hot and cold zones? I mean, is that being put on a sheet for you, or does it not work that way?
I do. I mean, there's some guys that really cover one half of the plate extremely well and not as well the other half, and it's always good to know that. But more often than not, I look kind of to see how they're going recently, and I just try to get ahead. If you get ahead, then you can really expand.
How much does Coors Field affect your pitching?
It's tough to say. I mean, I think more of it is the adjustments that you need to make going from road to home, home to road. It's just minor things with the different ways that the ball, you know, moves.
The ball moved differently, though,
I think
in Denver?
Yeah, subtly. There's some subtle differences. I think any pitcher will tell you that. But it's not like I'm going to change from who I am. It's just more about, you know, little adjustments I'm making with my hand position. When I'm playing catch, I take my catch very seriously. I think it's important to really dial myself in every time.
But now, I talked about at the very start that you changed your pitching attack. Now, your changeup is you really reduced that. Is that part and parcel of being in Denver? It wasn't doing the same action that you wanted?
Yeah, you know, changeup's always been a struggle for me. It's one of the things that prohibited me from being a good starting pitcher. But I think you know, I might bring it back, but I had difficulty last season maintaining the same action away from Coors Field as in Coors Field on my changeup, and it really became, you know, not consistent. When you don't have a consistent pitch, it's hard to trust it out there. And being that I can vary my breaking ball several different ways, I felt like I could almost utilize that as a sort of a changeup.
Yeah. Now, of course, when you go back in April, use your changeup a ton of times because everyone's hearing this now. Use it a ton. Get them thinking that. It's constant game theory, right? You got to be thinking I'm going to be throwing this all the time.
Exactly. It's like Maddox saying, you know, I'm saving my pitch for 5 months down the road. You know, I'm not on that level, but you know, I try to have game theory at all times.
You work the 7th and 8th inning now. Is that a role? I hear from the sports writers that you guys all have to work, and you know your role, yet you work the 7th or 8th. Would you work high leverage, or do you want to know when you are going to be utilized? What's the comfort zone here?
Me personally, I'm ready to pitch whenever the phone rings. I have no preference in terms of when they put me in. I don't need it to be a set routine or anything. I like to take the ball. I like to throw multiple innings. I like to throw one inning. I like to be in there when the game's on the line, whether that be the 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, doesn't matter to me. I know some pitchers do prefer to be in their routine, but for me, I just, you know, I'm ready at all times, and I've always had to throw multiple innings growing up, so it's nothing new to me.
You were a starter, too, so you could, I'm just, like, you go from starter to relief work. Why even just work 1 inning, right? Could you work 2 innings just as effectively, 2 1/3 or something like that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I did. In 2013, I threw, I think, the most multi-inning relief appearances in the MLB, and a lot of them were good appearances, and I always say that, you know, it's not so much how many innings I'm throwing, it's how good I'm going that day. If I'm going lousy, I'm going to be lousy in 1 inning. If I'm going good, I'm probably going to be good in 2, 3, 4, 5 innings. So, you know, really whatever the team needs, I'm more than willing to do, and I think most pitchers feel that way.
Yeah, then why is it being done? It's not being done across the board.
Well, I think that it's not being done because of the attrition during the season. It's such a long season. You need to kind of make sure your troops are ready for the end. And I think that everybody needs to be kind of, well, the thought is that everybody needs to know their role so that they can be managed a certain way to stay strong throughout the year.
And does that make sense to you?
Not to me, no. I think that it makes sense, you know, in some ways, but in other ways, no, because for me, if I had Aroldis Chapman, I wouldn't be afraid to deploy him in the 6th, 7th, 8th inning whenever the game is really going to be decided. So you got bases loaded and a great hitter up there. And
he was doing that and doing 2 innings a pop before he became the closer. And then now, okay, you got to put him on the shelf. It just doesn't make sense to me. I don't want to get him involved in it. But if Ken Rosenthal was here now, I would go to town on him. Plus, what's the perfect amount? What's the nexus of optimum innings, the workload, and yet effectiveness? How many innings could you pitch and still be very good at the level you're at now?
Well, it's hard to say. I mean, in 2012 and 2013, I threw almost 80 innings out of the pen, but it was less games. Last year, I threw more games, and it was only 65 innings. I was throwing shorter stints. For me, I could see going up to 90 innings, maybe even 100 innings, and still maintaining my level throughout the whole year. I think it depends on the guy. You know, not everybody's conditioned to do so or willing.